Hi, this is Stephen, an Astro Indicator Update, Excursions into Practical Astrology, and this is episode 30. And today, as usual, we're going to look at some price charts and the astrology key dates that are coming up in each of these markets for the Dow Jones Industrials, gold, silver, Bitcoin, the dollar, quick look at bonds. And then we're going to look at the U.S. Progress chart and its transit chart, but look way ahead into this fall and try to get an idea of whether or not some of the, serious concerns that we have as a country are going to be continuing at least into that time period. One element in astrology that's very much accented in this U.S. Progress chart is the asteroid Pallas Athena. We're going to be looking at it, and I'm going to note some research into vitamin C. Okay, here's the Dow Jones Industrials, and an awful lot has happened since I gave you my last episode. And let me get my notes going here. But in my last episode, I always say that this has been a very manipulated chart. But my last episode, again, today is March 6th. Let me say that. It's March 6th. Trading has not completed yet. I have to do this episode a little early, so the very last candlestick of the day is we're incomplete. But I did my last episode about 2 weeks ago, and it was right about in this area where you see my cursor, and I said just a few days ago we had an astrological date that very often was associated with turning points. But my caveat was that this market is so manipulated, we'll just have to see how it goes. Well, we basically have had a crash of some degree. And it has been challenging for everybody. But what do we have going on right now? Well, volatility is coming up. And so I see us trading back and forth between certain areas for a while. Actually, for the full month of March, I would say. When we get out to March 20th, out to here, we could get a definite bounce, but a bounce that I don't think is going to last a long time. You're just going to have to use certain retracement guidelines to judge for yourself how far it will come back. It may come back and definitely hit this trend line that you're seeing right here. Here we're trading right here. I could see us trading sideways and then at least come up to that trend line. This is I don't know why it's drawn in so oddly, but this should be the 65-day moving average, which may come down close to this trend line by the end of the month. But essentially, the next few astrology dates that are coming up, Monday in particular, okay, March 19th in particular, so the March 9th, 19th, those astrology dates are associated with volatility. And that's what we've seen, and I think that's what's going to continue. We may get a bounce on March 20th, but it's not until the very end of the month, March 31st, around that date is when I think we will definitely get a rally of some sort. But again, this isn't advice, but just looking at what's going on in the world, looking at the astrology, I have a feeling that rally is something that if you are a trader, you are going to want to short. Okay, let's move on. So gold is being challenged today. This is Friday, March 6th. I knew that this 6th date was potentially a reversal date. However, gold is the safe haven in my estimation to be in. So again, because we don't have a lot of strong bullish astrology in gold, we may just see it trade sideways somewhat, which might not be a bad thing. It could kind of stabilize this market and actually allow it to strengthen. But I'm looking at my notes. So today is a classic volatility day in gold. We don't have something notably bullish happening in gold until we get to March 20th, way out here. So when you get these gaps, very often either you get a strong signal that just continues until a date occurs, generally speaking, or you get a sideways. Because the fundamentals of gold are so good, I kind of doubt that we're going to get much of a pullback. We may get a pullback to this green trend line right here. That's something that's quite common to test a previous resistance level, okay? So that's just my forecast in gold right now. Let's move on. Silver. Okay, silver's had a lot of energy in it. It usually follows gold. I knew today was going to be a key day, and we're seeing some volatility in silver. Let me find out let me look ahead here. But again, when we look out to March 19th, March 20th, you see it down here. For some reason, something's happening on that day. And in the precious metals markets, it should be a day where you see the markets rising. So again, we're not above the 65-day moving average yet. We're not even above this resistance level. So silver is lagging gold, and it could just continue somewhat trading sideways until we get further into the month. We are, so it should be increasingly attracted to more people, because this market is not overbought by any measure when you come down here and look at the MACD. So I'm kind of rushing through this episode, and hopefully people are following me here. I forgot to give you my overall preface and description. The vertical lines are key astrological dates that I see extra price movement taking place, usually biased to the upside, but if a market has been trending up for a long time, those dates can just indicate a reversal. And then I use classical, traditional technical analysis to supplement my astrology. And we have relative strength index here. We have the MACD, MACD down below. Okay, let's look at Bitcoin. Now, Bitcoin is behaving, as if everything else in the world is, just nothing has happened, whether it's relative to the economy or epidemics and so forth. But we are coming on to a fairly important date tomorrow in Bitcoin, one that only happens every couple years. Normally, it is bullish, and that you see it indicated with this vertical line right here. And it should maybe start happening today somewhat. We are above the 65-day moving average. We are definitely still in the oversold area. In the MACD, we could get a crossover pretty soon. If that happens, it wouldn't surprise me at all to see Bitcoin trade up to this trend line and maybe even challenge it. Looking ahead, after this Saturday, there isn't actually a lot of things going on. So I don't see, you can analyze this and combine a lot of things, fundamentals, technicals, the astrology. But I don't see a lot of momentum in this chart. So judging what happens tomorrow and over the next several days will give us an idea of, how potent this very short-term time period is. And it may be enough to take us through that trend line. Okay. And if it does, it could just continue. But the next few days are key, and it's sort of starting right now, because on Wednesday, the last few Wednesday was a bullish day, and we started to this several-day rally has started, and tomorrow that should get a shot in the arm. So we'll just have to see. Now, look what's happening to the U.S. dollar. I use an ETF, UUP, as sort of a proxy. I can't get the U.S. dollar on this charting site, but this is reflecting what's going on in the U.S. dollar and what's actually going on in the bond market. They're pumping money into the system, whether it's into the repo, the overnight lending market within the banks is called the repo market. It's in trouble. The Fed is having to make short-term loans to the banking system. That's money going into the system, and normally when you see that, then the dollar starts dropping in value. It's usually on a longer-term basis bullish for precious metals, which we've seen to a certain extent. However, this is a very important support line for the dollar. If we break below there, and again, we're only halfway through the trading day on Friday, March 6th here, but if we break through this, we are heading further south. And what's that mean to the average person is that normally inflation, commodity prices start going up. The way you hedge that, generally speaking, is with precious metals, possibly, even though they're more risky, precious metal stocks, gold mining stocks, things of that nature, and possibly Bitcoin. This is not trading advice. This is just sharing my trading experience, sharing my astrological background with you as well. So let me shuffle my papers here and look at the U.S. dollar. Again, so I can't remember everything. I have to look at my notes. Again, my goodness, the U.S. dollar over the next several weeks, it just reflects volatility, particularly on March 12th, March 18th. Maybe when we get into mid-April, we'll see a bounce, but who knows from what level? And that's why I combine, the technicals here. I'm looking at this support line as being very key in the U.S. dollar chart. Okay, finally, bonds. We are at historically high level of bonds, which means low yields. Okay, it's sort of an inverse relationship there. We've never seen this record low yields at many different types of bonds, levels of maturity. I'm using an ETF proxy. It's called TBT to reflect this drop in yields. Okay. And it's really took a dive today. It's starting to bounce. This is not good for savers, for the banking system. So we'll just see how long this continues. But this is hurting a lot of people. Even hedge funds have been trying to play this and to short the bond market and actually make money when actually they thought this particular ETF was going to go up, and now it's gone down. So there's a number of hedge funds that have been trying to second guess things and are getting hit. So what is going on way into the future? We have much conflicting or ambiguous information concerning the coronavirus. If you go back into my recent videos, I told, going even back 2 months, I said something is going to happen in January, and I could see it in the U.S. chart. A couple videos ago, I talked about seeing it in China's progress chart. Okay, in China's progress chart, I could see the Moon and Pluto in a conjunction, which just indicated a great deal of stress in the system, a very emotional crisis, sort of, at least the appearance, or people were responding in the country as a nation as like this was sort of a life and death situation. Okay. Go back and look for, I think I had it in my title, something about China and the progress chart. Well, just out of curiosity, I looked into the future here there's two ways in astrology to look at the current moment and get an idea of what's going on. Actually, several ways. It's too complicated to get into it right now, but one of them is the progress chart, secondary progress chart. This is of September of this year, okay? And what I see really surprised me, because look what's going on right here, okay? Maybe I can draw this in. Sometimes I don't know how to do it. Okay, right there, okay. This is the same configuration that is going on in China right now. Is the same thing going to happen in the U.S.? I don't know, but the tenor, the sentiment, the emotional, the emotional state of the country as a whole is going to continue in sort of a crisis mode to some degree. At least that is what the astrology is indicating, okay? And it may get better as you go into October, November, and December, because this will have completed, the Moon will have passed Pluto. But something we might be hitting, a peak possibly in mid-September here. In addition, so that's Moon conjunct Pluto, tells me that this isn't going to go away anytime quick. And that's maybe the main point of this whole episode. But in addition, we have the progressed Sun is conjunct, just had passed this asteroid Pallas Athena. The Sun takes 1 year to move a degree in the progress chart. So this is a theme going on in the identity of the U.S. right now. It has something to do with Pallas Athena. In addition, it has something to do with Venus opposite Saturn in the progress chart. Can I draw a line here? Let's see if I can do this. And right there, okay? And this, I think, has a lot to do with our economy, okay? It seems obvious. Venus has a lot to do with love and beauty and attraction and social interactions, which are now being, constrained, but also it has to do with money, okay? And it is going through a period of oppression, essentially. And we could see, we are seeing a downturn in our economy. So to me, things are very clear. The one thing that's a little difficult to interpret is the Pallas Athena, okay? But before I get into that, let's just see if we can look at the transits of the U.S., okay, during the same time and see if we see any similarities. Okay, this is the U.S. transits in September. I don't know how many months away that is, 6 months away, 7 months away. Well, let me get rid of some things here. Well, this is the transit. This is where the planets will be in September. This is the natal birth chart of the U.S. that I use in the center here, which you've seen in other episodes, okay? And in other episodes, I've talked about how we're going through a transit of Pluto, which you see right there. And so we got Pluto right there. And it has, all year, it is opposite Mercury. Okay, and these things, from an Earth standpoint, we get things called retrograde gradations where it looks like the planets are going backwards, retrograde, and so that's what's happening here. And Pluto is back to 22, Saturn's back to 25, and essentially they're opposite Mercury at at 24. So the symbolism of Mercury is continuing, where there is, I talked about a crisis of some form. It could deal with the media, education, propaganda, education. And my feeling is that we may see many more schools closing by the fall. And as a necessity or precautionary measure, I don't know what. But also Mercury deals with trading and transactions and business and import-export related things. And so all this is being affected. Fortunately, as we get into late 2020 and 2021, these planets are moving forward, and this is going to diminish to a certain extent. But oddly enough, when we compare this transit chart to the progress chart that we just looked at, we have a strong Pallas Athena on a shorter term basis happening too, right at the same time. So look what we've got here. I'm getting better at my drawing. So here's Pallas Athena. Look at what Pallas Athena is. Pallas Athena is opposite the Sun, and in the progress chart they were conjunct. So the same sort of dynamic, to a great extent, is happening in September. This is, while it was happening over a longer term period, you could see it in the progress chart. It's kind of coming to a peak here in September. So how can we make sense of this? Well, I'm going to talk about Pallas Athena sort of in general, and then it just sort of is obvious here. Well, the major themes of Pallas Athena in astrology, you look back at its mythology, but you then, empirically, you look at how it operates in people's charts, and you do see people with strong Pallas Athenas being very often very creative, and maybe having sort of an unusual way of thinking that is a benefit, or you see problems with how they're, in their mental state. It's related to whole pattern perception, kind of intuitive insight. But this is the big one right here. Okay, Pallas Athena does deal with sort of whole system healing. And on an individual level, that might be like acupuncture or acupressure, or energetic healing of some sort. But the main thing is that it really, essentially deals a lot, I think, relative to what's going on in the U.S. It's dealing with healing. And that is just going to be a theme of how we can deal with this impending issue, which I think is going to continue to a certain degree, even though, I've done a lot of research in this area, and I have my own questions about it, and about its severity and its origins and that nature. But healing on many levels is going to be something that needs to be addressed. Pallas Athena also has a warrior image. It's sort of the protector. It's a feminine energy, though. It can, even though these are associated with masculinity, it retains its femininity when you look back into the mythology of it. Okay, and finally, I just wanted to share with you a couple research items. This was a study done at Virginia Commonwealth University. It's just happened with one person. This took place not too long ago. This was written in 2017, but it is of a 20-year-old woman who contracted a type of virus while she was traveling, and it developed into what is called respiratory distress syndrome, which is, in my understanding, is the same syndrome that coronavirus often can produce in its most severe forms. And so she was seriously ill when she was on mechanical ventilation, failed, okay? But when they started giving her intravenous vitamin C, high-dose intravenous vitamin C begun, the patient's recovery was rapid. I forget what this means. She was being given oxygen, that's what that means, and that was discontinued after 7 days. The patient recovered with no long-term residual effects of this complication with pneumonia, okay? And there has been anecdotal evidence. Again, I'm not recommending this, don't rely on me, I'm just sharing this with you. There has been anecdotal evidence coming out of China of people taking very high dose vitamin C, I mean thousands of milligrams, when they notice symptoms taking place. And I have seen also research is being initiated in China on this very same treatment, intravenous vitamin C. Okay. And finally, I was just curious. I think I came across this someplace on the web, and I went to PubMed, do a Google search or DuckDuckGo, PubMed.com. It's a great place to do research on health-related issues. And here's one about quercetin, which is a bioflavonoid, and how it inhibits an element that is often responsible in types of pneumonia. Okay, so it too, so it's in the vitamin C family, it's a bioflavonoid. It too alleviated pathological damage of lung tissue and inhibited the release of cytokines, which is an inflammatory element that they're seeing often with the coronavirus. So again, just something to think about. Continue on with your own research. Look into it. Okay, that's it for today. My name is Stephen. I have an art psychology background, studying astrology for 40 years, applying it to the financial markets for 25. I've been a long-term advocate of at least investing a little of one's funds into precious metals and cryptocurrencies. I accept Bitcoin donations. If I don't do this podcast, every 2 weeks, if you'd like to be notified, please consider subscribing. But that's it for now. Best wishes. Thank you for listening.